companions, come join me in rhyme. Come lift up your voices in chorus with mine. Come lift up your voices, all grief to refrain. For we may or might never all meet here again. So here's a health to the company and one to my lass. Let's drink and be merry all out of one glass. Let's drink and be merry, all grief to refrain. For we may or might never all meet here again. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you all. Kinmilly Felcha, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and to our folks here from the United States. Howdy, y'all. We are here on the banks. Oh, that's a little hot there, sorry. There we go. We're here on the banks of the Brosna River in County Westmeath at the Kilbeggan Distillery, the home of Kilbeggan Irish whiskey. Opened in 1757, the Kilbeggan Distillery is the oldest distillery in the world, with the oldest pot still in operation. It is rather fitting that Kilbeggan means little church, and for many of you, whiskey is a religion. My name is Simon Brooking. I'm the Jim Beam's Scotch ambassador and your moderator for today's great whiskey debate. As Mr. Cashman has the home turf advantage, Mr. Campbell felt that there would be safety in numbers. So I'm here as his second if needed. But actually I am impartial. Born in Scotland, I live in the United States, and I'm married to an Irish woman. So consider me whiskey Swiss, all right? As for Mr. Harris from America, well, he's on his own. This is actually the second clash of these whiskey giants. The first one was in Scotland, and as the Irish giant Finn McCool crossed the Giant's Causeway to fight the Scottish giant Benandonner, Mr. Cashman has invited his mortal enemies back to his home ground to test their mettle and go head-to-head for a winner-take-all decision on what is the world's preferred whiskey. Scotch, bourbon, Irish whiskey. Oh, you guys have got your work cut out for you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble! Joining us today, we are fortunate enough to have three giants of the whiskey world, men of great distinction who personify their whiskeys and their cultures. Our first whiskey warrior, weighing in at 83 kilos, hailing from Islay, Scotland, the former lobster fisherman gone rogue, Lafroig's master distiller, John, love him or hate him, Campbell. Come on in, John. John, what do you have there?
Supplies.
Okay, good. Our next competitor comes to you all the way from Austin, Texas. He is Jim Beam's Bourbon Vivant, the man, the myth, the legend in his own mind. Ladies and gentlemen, give him a warm first-time welcome to Ireland, Adam Haystack Harris.
Everybody doing? How you doing? Yeah. We introduce and then we'll watch the music kicks in and walk off.
Okay, finally now, your hometown hero representing the Republic of Ireland and the future of Irish whiskey from Wicklow, Mr. John, the cash is in the bank, Cashman.
Come on, Ireland! Come on! Let's get this on, come on! Ladies and gentlemen, these ladies.
What are your names? Ladies and gentlemen, Casey and Rose Carriage. Thank you very much.
Hey.
right, gentlemen, up on the... Come together. Rules. All right.
Follow that, eh?
Yeah, that's an entrance, guys.
Okay, no biting, no kicking, no spilling, spitting, or smashing. Anyone not finishing their whiskey will be disqualified. Go to your corners.
Hold on. We interlude here. If you want to throw in the towel, Lefroy style, you can. And we can also use the other three. So, if the audience want to throw in the towel as well, we can pick 3 people out in the audience, Simon, if you want to.
Oh, there we go. We'll give it one for each table. There's a table. There we go. Okay, so we'll first start with an introduction from each fighter, as well, and give us a little bit of background on yourself and the history of your whiskey. Gentlemen, we will start with Mr. John Cashman.
Okay. Cé míle fáilte cin ús le galéir tá fáilte rómh go Kilbeggan inniu. Ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome, and welcome to the Kilbeggan distillery today. What can I say about Irish whiskey that hasn't already been said? We invented whiskey. We all know that here in this room. We were the first to make it. And where we are today in the Kilbeggan distillery is the oldest licensed whiskey distillery in the world, dating from 1757. And as we know, it was the monks who started distilling here in Ireland. So more than likely, very close to this site, distilling has been occurring since maybe around the 8th century. Throughout all the centuries, our whiskey dominated the world. We made the finest whiskey in the world. We continue today to make the finest whiskey in the world. And what makes Irish whiskey so good? That weather. Unfortunately, we mightn't like the rain today, but if we didn't have the rain, we wouldn't have the climate that we have. The Irish climate is the best climate in the world in which to make whiskey, due to the lack of extremes. We don't have very cold winters. We don't have very warm summers. And this lack of extreme allows the whiskey to mature at a more mild and mellow pace, resulting in a whiskey that is softer, lighter, sweeter, easier to drink, better than any other whiskey in the world. Hopefully I'm speaking to the converted, but please, maybe try to be a bit more neutral. Give these gentlemen a chance. Please listen to them. Don't close your ears as soon as they start talking. Even, a Texan accent, a Scottish accent, I know it's difficult. You're going to have to concentrate. But please, give them your time and attention. But I think you know where your allegiances lie. You know where you're from. You know where makes the best whiskey. Ladies and gentlemen, vote often, vote early, vote Irish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cashman. Mr. Campbell, your whiskey, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. At least I got dressed for the occasion anyway, yeah? So score one for Scotland, hopefully. So everything John said, probably right. The good thing with evolution is they usually take things on and improve things. So Irish invented Scotch whisky, Scots have perfected it. Okay? So there we go.
Fight and talk.
Score 2 for Scotland. But at Lefroy, what makes us different is we use a lot of the land, and it's a lot of the distillery flavours that make us unique. So we use the turf, you would call it, we call it peat. We flavour the malted barley with that flavour, and Lefroy is known as one of the most richly flavoured of all Scotch whiskies. So you're going to get that experience, you're going to get the full experience this afternoon. The same with me. No half-hearted measures, the full experience. So vote for Scotch, okay?
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Harris, you have the floor.
Thank you, Simon. As Simon said in my introduction, this is my first time to Ireland, so I want to thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about bourbon with y'all. Hopefully get some converts by the time we're done today. I've done several of these great whiskey debates on my home turf, so I know what the home field advantage is like, but I will say that for the first time, I'm the one with the funny accent. So please bear with me. If you need a translator, I'll be happy to repeat anything at the end of this. Why should we drink bourbon? What's the great thing about bourbon? I know we're the new kid on the block. I'm the youngest guy probably on this dais here, but we're also the youngest style of whiskey that's out there. American whiskey, bourbon whiskey. What makes it so great? Well, I guess John's a little calm and a little smooth and mellow for bourbon country because we like extremes. We like big, bold flavors with bourbon. We use corn as our base grain. That's a big, robust, sweet grain. We like our hot summers and we love our cold winters. And what that does is that really matures the bourbon in a way that brings out big wood sugars. We use our barrels for the first time and only one time. These guys like them. We leave such good flavor in our barrels that they like to get them from us. And so they like to mature those lighter grains. So we like big, bold flavors. And people that like bourbon tend to be bigger than life. You know, we've had some really great fans through the years, and after 200 plus years of making whiskey with Beam, you know, we've seen a lot of fans come in and come out. So hopefully today we'll get you guys enjoying some good American bourbon whiskey, and hopefully y'all vote for us when the day is over. So thank you for having me. Let's vote bourbon.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Round one. That was the bell there. So the first round, the question is, which historical figure would you associate with your whiskey? As well as, who would you like to sit across from and drink whiskey with a historical figure? And we're going to start with Scotland, Mr. John Campbell, and teachers.
Okay. We do the whiskey first?
Do whatever you like.
Right. So, well, teachers, Highland Cream, brought together in the mid-1800s. One of the big blending houses of Scotland was William Teacher. And what he did, he was really a real innovator at that time. He brought out the dram houses in Glasgow mainly. And even in these days, he had quite definitive conditions for his dram houses. So, for example, they were all non-smoking establishments. And you can imagine in the mid-1800s, most people were smoking and stuff like that. So he had definite rules that he wanted to do it. He wanted the quality of the liquid to be correct. And then Teacher's Highland Cream. Now, the base of this, one of the things that makes Teacher's Highland Cream different, the base of this is 60% grain spirit, 40% single malts. And that's a really high content for what we would call a blended whiskey. And there's 42 different distilleries' flavours in the 40% of the liquid. So a lot of variation, a lot of flavour coming in here. The main one being our sister distillery called Ardmore Distillery. Now it's up in the Highlands of Scotland, so very different. A lot of the conditions that John talked about in Ireland here, we get the same conditions because we're so close. But if you go to the northeast of Scotland, it's extreme. It's more like Adams, so they get minus 25 in the winter and maybe up to 6 or 7 Celsius in the summer. No, I'm only kidding. There's snow there in June. It's a cold, cold place. But anyway, that adds to the flavours you get in the liquid as well. So with that, it's a peated one as well. So there's quite a lot of the biggest, most famous Scotch whisky blends are peat-based as well. And a lot of these flavours either come from the Highlands or the islands. So it'll depend what one. But most of the main ones are all peated as well. And Teacher's is exactly that. So Ardmore's just a medium peated single malt Scotch whisky, and that'll account for quite a big percentage of the total makeup of this liquid. So you will get a slight bit of peat. So if you want to nose it up, you get a bit of the maltiness, a bit of sweet, and a bit of peat. Okay. With that, this is bottled at 40% alcohol, and if we should give it a wee taste. A light, gentle start. You get some of the peat, some of that spice coming through, a wee bit of floral as well. Nice lingering aftertaste coming from that peat smoke as well. Who would I most like to have dinner with? Well, probably Marilyn Monroe is the person I've been thinking of today, would be that. And just like Teacher Scotch whisky. Great character, full, robust, nice curves going on in here. And just like me in this debate, I want to be loved by you as well. So, cheers.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. The question now goes to Kilbeggan and Mr. Cashman.
What historical figure would I most associate my whiskey with?
Thanks.
I probably wouldn't go historical. I'd probably go modern. And I'm trying to think of, we all know the heritage and the history and how great Irish whiskey is, and we have to recognise that, and we accept that, and we dab our cap to that history. But also we are looking forward, and we're modern. We're a modern country. We're looking at innovating new ways of whiskey, bringing our whiskey out into the masses. And in that regard, I would probably put us like Imelda May, the fantastic rockabilly rock and roll singer from the Liberties in Dublin. Young, beautiful, elegant, smooth. However, singing in the style of the past, but forging her own future from that. Exactly the same as Irish whiskey. Taking what happened in the past, but looking forward and making a path for us into the future. So I think Imelda May would be a nice person that I would like to associate my whiskey with. The whiskey that we have, the first whiskey, is Kilbeggan. It's the name over the door, as we say here. And the Kilbeggan blend is a typical Irish blended whiskey. It is absolutely everything that we expect an Irish whiskey to be. It is soft, it is light, it is fruity, it is sweet, it is easy drinking. However, Kilbeggan is different from the majority of other Irish blended whiskies in its distillation process. We here in Kilbeggan, like in our sister distillery in Cooley, double distill our whiskies. We do not triple distill our whiskies. And one of the biggest myths and fallacies about Irish whiskey is that all Irish whiskey has to be triple distilled. Well, that doesn't exist in any law, that doesn't exist in any rule book. And our friends in some of the other distilleries would tell you they triple distill because they want a smoother whiskey. They want triple distilled for extra smoothness. We've all heard that. Well, this whiskey is as smooth as any triple distilled whiskey. However, it retains more flavour. Each time you mature a whiskey, not just are you making it smoother and softer, but you are purifying it. Triple distilling a whiskey will take, naturally, some flavour out from that whiskey. Now they will have you believe, yes, it's triple distilled, that's why it's smooth. Well then why is this as smooth? Well, it's again what I said in my introduction. It's our climate. If you make a good whiskey and you mature it here in Ireland, it is naturally going to be soft and smooth and light and easy to drink because of the maturation process. It is natural. This Kilbeggan blend is a blend of 3 different styles of whiskey. Teachers is a blend, as John said, of over 40 different styles of whiskey. We're a blend of 3 different whiskies from 2 separate sites. We use grain whiskey from the Cooley Distillery in County Louth. We use malt whiskey from the Cooley Distillery in County Louth. And we use, this year, the first year, we're now also using malt whiskey from the little pot still that you see outside that you passed by today. All the liquid that's being made on site here today is being used in the blend of Kilbeggan. Some of which, of course, we're maturing that little bit longer and we'll release down the line as a single malt from Kilbeggan. But today it goes into this. And it's the only whiskey in the world that contains whiskey made here on the oldest distilling site in the world, using the oldest pot still producing whiskey in the world. What you have here in your glass is centuries of Irish whiskey heritage. On the nose, soft, sweet, vanilla, your typical Irish style of whiskey. All that sweetness is coming from the bourbon barrels, the second-hand barrels that Adam alluded to earlier on. You got to remember, he says, yeah, we all use his barrels. Well, if we hadn't invented whiskey, he'd just have water in those barrels. So at least we gave him the idea of putting something decent into those barrels to begin with. But yeah, because we use predominantly bourbon barrels, you're going to get a lot of vanilla, a lot of softness. Some of the element from the bourbon whiskey that is soaked into the wood is coming out into that. And that's the DNA of Kilbeggan Whiskies, the Kilbeggan Distilling Company, formerly known as Cooley Distillery. That's our DNA. That's some of the flavours that you get through all of our whiskies. When you taste it, you get the little tingle of the malt going on in the background. You also compare this with a triple distilled whiskey. There's more consistency of flavour from first sip all the way through. It's one constant flavour profile. And that's why this whiskey is so versatile. Sláinte. Yeah, you can clap.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cashman. Mr. Harris.
Yes. All right, well, I might like you guys a little bit more than my fellow debaters out there because I'm going to taste the whiskey first and then I'll flap my gums. So let's try a little Jim Beam White Label. This is a 4-year-old bourbon aged in the great state of Kentucky at our Claremont distillery. It is 80 proof. This is the #1 selling bourbon in the world. So luckily these guys prepped you. They told you how to look for the color, give it the nose, and then give it a taste. What I'd like for you to notice is the fact that all the bourbons that you're going to try are the darkest whiskeys on each of the different flights that you'll be getting of whiskey, and that is because of that new wood. It is because of those big flavors, and it is because of that extreme temperature that we'd like to age in. So let's go ahead and taste. Caramel, vanilla, good sweetness. Those are the things that you want to find when you're drinking a good bourbon. Now, when Jacob Beam rolled his first barrel of whiskey off in 1795 in Kentucky, he began our business. So we are, yes, the young kids on the block, but we're a 215-year-old startup company, if you think about it that way, right? So when Jacob Beam rolled off his whiskey, he really did it just as a trade, kind of sold it to the neighbors, not really a commercialized industry. It wasn't until 4 generations later when Jim Beam saw us through Prohibition. And at the age of 72, after Prohibition, he was the first gentleman to actually apply for a license to get back up and running at the distillery. And in 120 days, with a small crew of very thirsty friends, they rebuilt the Jim Beam distillery. It was at that point that we started to call that bourbon Jim Beam. And since then, we've had 3 generations pass, so we are a 7-generation family, and nobody else in the bourbon industry can say that they've had 7 generations of the same bloodline making their whiskeys from the very beginning until the present with Fred No, our 7th-generation master distiller. Who would I... Question is, who would I have a drink with? Or what is American bourbon... what is American whiskey? What is bourbon whiskey most like? Who's the celebrity it's most like, I guess? Well, in those 200 years of making whiskey, we've had a lot of fans. We've had presidents love bourbon. We've had, Abraham Lincoln. Ulysses S. Grant, his general in the American Civil War, he was a big fan of Old Crow bourbon whiskey, which is one of the bourbons that we make in Kentucky. And he was such a good general that Lincoln said that if all of his men fought like Ulysses S. Grant, he'd be giving everybody a case of Old Crow every day. Mark Twain, another famous American that was a huge bourbon fan. One of our other presidents, Lyndon Baines Johnson, he actually made bourbon the spirit of the United States, which is recognized as by the UN these days. In 1964, gave us our standards of identity that defined bourbon as such. A lot of people think bourbon's a bit of the wild, wild west. But we're actually a really highly regulated spirit. You have to be made in America. We have to use the new unused barrel. We have to be at least 51% corn. We can't distill higher than 160 proof. We can't go into a barrel higher than 125 proof. We can't go into a bottle any lower than 80 proof. And then most importantly, bourbon is a genuine spirit, meaning that all it is water, wood, and grain. There is no added flavor to bourbon. All those things you're drinking are very authentic when you try bourbon. When you drink the #1 selling bourbon in the world, Jim Beam, it's an authentic spirit, like Americans themselves. So I think when you're going for a celebrity, I guess, trying to think of someone that everybody around would know, I guess really thinking about big, bold flavors, you got to think about John Wayne, I guess, because he's big, he's bold, and if you don't like it, to hell with you. You can drink with the Johns. So vote for bourbon.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Okay, that's the end of round 1. So first round, so who would vote for Scotch? Who would vote? Oh, there you go. Okay, an Irish whiskey.
Come on! There we go.
And how about bourbon there?
Come on, bourbon. Hey, all right.
There you go. Good. Well, we still got
Thank
2
you,
more.
guys.
We got 2 more rounds to win them over there.
Big catch up,
This
guys.
is a very confident start. I'm
Yes,
feeling good. Feeling good.
Gives you somewhere to go, right?
There we go.
All right. We're moving in. We're moving into round 2. Bell, please. Thank you. So, gentlemen, the question is, how has innovation shaped your whiskey? And we will start. We'll start with Ireland again today, Mr. Cashman and Greenore.
Okay. The whiskey that we have is Greenore. But to, I suppose, address the question, how has innovation shaped our whiskey? Well, we here in the Kilbeggan Distilling Company and in the Cooley days were always very innovative in everything that we did. The whiskey that we're going to taste is a single grain Irish whiskey. It's the only single grain Irish whiskey out on the market. And we decided at an early stage, and I know he's going to hate me for this, but I just like to introduce Mr. Willie MacArthur here, former director of Cooley Distillery and one of the founders of the company. And thanks to Willie and John Teeling and some of the other, that we were able to bring this innovation back to Irish whiskey. So Willie, thank you very much for all you've done for Irish whiskey. We were always very innovative, and that was reflected in some of the awards that we've won. When Whiskey Magazine first started doing awards with Irish whiskies, we were named the Innovators of the Year. And why did we innovate? Well, if you stay too still, you become stale, you become stagnant. So we wanted to be innovative, we wanted to move. And the Irish whiskey industry, unfortunately, until Willie and John came together to form Cooley Distillery, had become just that. It had become stale and stagnant. The monopoly that was controlling Irish whiskey were only really happy producing one or two particular styles of whiskey. So we decided to look outside of those styles of whiskey and try to bring Irish whiskey back to its rightful place as being recognised around the world as some of the best whiskies ever made. So we decided to do single grain whiskies using corn or maize, 94% corn with 6% malted barley to help the fermentation process, distilled in the column stills rather than a pot still, and then matured in first fill bourbon barrels and bottled after 8 long years in the warehouse. And that is our green ore, something new, something innovative. But then we'd also look to the past to innovate. One of the things that I always find hilarious are people all around the world who say, well, how is Irish whiskey different from other whiskies? Well, in Ireland, they don't use smoke, they don't use peat. Everyone coming here today drove through a bog to get here. 1/6 of the landmass of Ireland is turf or peat. Peat was always used in the whiskey making process. And it's just as you mentioned Churchill. Churchill had a great quote. He said, victors write history. Well, so do survivors. And the survivors of the Irish whiskey industry had stopped peating their whiskey. So they changed history to suit themselves. But peating was always part of Irish whiskey. Here in Kilbeggan, even when you look at the old pot stills outside, it was direct heat firing those kilns. What heat did they use? Well, originally they would have used peat before the canals came in when they were able to get coal more cheaply from the UK. And that's what happened. So we reintroduced that lost art of peating to Irish whiskey. And that, I think, is innovative. We have whiskies maturing at the moment. We have pure pot still whiskies using original recipes from the 1840s. We have rye whiskies maturing here at the moment. Our innovation hasn't stopped. We will continue to be innovative. And as I said, the classic example of that is the first whiskey we're going to try in this second round, and that is Green Ore. Green Ore gets its name from the deep sea port approximately 3 to 4 miles from the Cooley Distillery, the port of Green Ore. We called it after that port because the grain that we use is corn, and Ireland doesn't have climate conducive to corn growing to the quality that we require. I grew up on a farm, my father grows corn, but it's corn for cattle feed. It's not corn that we could use for making whiskey. And we don't produce enough of it in Ireland. So we use corn from France, and people say, well, why do you do that? Well, it was always done. There was always a close relationship between Ireland and France back all the centuries. And corn from France has been used in the past. So this is 94% corn, 6% malted barley. Single grain. Single refers to distillery. This means of one distillery. Grain refers to the fact that the core ingredient in it is not barley, is not malted barley. It is 94% corn. The 6% malted barley helps the fermentation process. We then matured in first fill bourbon barrels because we're looking for that beautiful vanilla flavour. We're looking for that softness to come into this whiskey. Generally, a liquid that is distilled in a column still tends to be nondescript. In Ireland, it was always known as silent spirit, from a silent still. Silent because it couldn't tell you where it came from. It didn't taste of anything. But our stills up in Cooley are full of copper. I will never, as long as I live, I will never understand how copper affects flavour in spirit. It just does. And we found that our liquid was so full of flavour, it'd be a shame to just hide it in a blend. So we started bottling it after 8 years. So on the nose, you get the vanilla, you get the corn. If you close your eyes and take a big sniff, it's like sweet corn. And if you pass by our distillery, when we're doing the mash, when we're adding the hot water into the corn, the smell is the same as a child putting hot milk on cornflakes. That sweet aroma. If you're going to make a whiskey out of a sweet cereal like corn, the sweetness is going to come through. When you taste it, that sweetness continues. You can taste the corn, lovely, soft vanilla corn. Still very much a whiskey. It's not a sweet liqueur, it is a whiskey. There is that whiskey bite to it, but it is a softer, lighter style of whiskey. A modern Irish whiskey, an innovative Irish whiskey, an Irish whiskey for the future. Sláinte.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cashman. We'll now turn it over to Mr. Harris with Devil's Cut.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you for that whiskey. I actually do love Grenoir quite a bit, which would make sense since it's at least 51% corn and aged in a bourbon barrel. All right, sounds a lot like you're making a bourbon. All right. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. Hard to follow that. Let's see here. Innovation. You know, we have marketing folks that live in an ivory tower that like to think they're the smartest guys in the room, right? So we come up with innovative products, and a lot of people think, you know, bourbon's flavors, you know, flavorings. We might have black cherry red stag or something like that. Is that the only way that we innovate? Absolutely not. You know, we think that we're smart, so we come up with these ideas of what we're going to do to make new whiskeys, different expressions of bourbon. But much like what you mentioned previously, John, we actually find a lot of our inspiration from our past. So taking inspiration from Jacob Beam himself, who when he started barreling his whiskey, the whiskey wasn't sitting in the warehouse for 4 years or 9 years or 10 years or 12 years, like our newest innovation that's coming out in the States, a 12-year-old Jim Beam bourbon. Not like that. It really stayed in the barrel probably just long enough to get down the river away or make it over the next pass to the neighbors, you know? And so that bourbon really just sat there for a brief amount of time, picking up just a little bit of color and getting a very early balance. And that's evident in one of our newest innovations that came out this year. It's our aged white whiskey, Jacob's Ghost. It's not a moonshine, but it's a whiskey that sat in a barrel for 1 year. And so you do get a nice little basic balance of the flavors of the corn distillate and then also the wood sugar that we have in the new bourbon barrel. So thinking we're coming out with something a little bit new and innovating the white whiskey world, which we actually are by aging it just a little bit, we're also paying homage to 200 plus years of our heritage and what Jacob Beam himself would have rolled off all those many years ago when he was making his first Old Tub or Clear Springs whiskey. So again, not outthinking the room, even though we like to think sometimes we're the smartest in the room, but pay homage to what we've done right. Now what you have here is another one of those little instances with Devil's Cut. So Fred No, our 7th generation master distiller, he was talking with some of these folks and they were bouncing some ideas off of Fred. You know, what do you think about, you know, maybe coming up with something new, a different whiskey expression, a new bourbon to put out there? And he starts telling stories about how back in the day, a lot of warehousemen, they would actually sweat a barrel. So he came to this practice when he was in his young teens, and some, you know, warehouseman was around the house, and Fred happened to see him, and he says, "Hey, boy, you want to get yourself a quick drink of liquor?" And, you know, Fred, being a young man and the son of a master distiller, probably wasn't, you know, didn't have to go too far for a drink, but said, "Sure, yeah, I'm interested. Let me hear what you got to say." This guy said, "Well, you have access to an old barrel?" Well, who better to have access to an old empty barrel than the son of a 6th generation master distiller, right? So he said, "Sure, I can get an old empty barrel." He said, "All right, well, what you want to do is you want to take that old empty barrel, put a few gallons of water in there, roll it around your backyard during the hot of the day. You're going to do that for a couple of days, a week's worth of days, leach that water out, or empty that water out of the wood. You're going to get yourself a nice little light drink." Now, it's going to be very flavorful because what happens is when bourbon goes into that new barrel is like a dry sponge. So you send a few gallons of whiskey into there, right off the bat, you're going to lose 3 gallons of bourbon into that wood, never to get it back again. And so what we've done by sweating that barrel is you're picking up that really flavorful wood that's gotten really deep into the char, the smoke, the oak. Those sort of notes come out when you talk about that whiskey. It's going to be very light and proof, but it's going to be very flavorful, very rich, with some of those more mature whiskey notes that people like when you spend more time in a barrel, getting deeper into the wood sugar. So this is what Fred figured out. And he decided that what would be a great idea is if we managed to take our old barrels, take that very flavorful whiskey out of the wood, and then add that to some 6-year-old Jim Beam, what you were going to end up with is a very, very flavorful bourbon. And that's the Devil's Cut. So when you think about why the Devil's Cut, a little thing that we talk about with those hot summers and cold winters in Kentucky, especially those hot summers at the top of a rick house can be about 120, 130 degrees in August. Very hot, right? Sorry, I can't do the conversion as quickly as you guys can. Maths were not my best. About 130 degrees gets very hot, so there's a little bit of water that will evaporate out of the barrel, because every whiskey barrel has a little bit of water in it because it helps the maturation process. So with that, when the water is evaporated, what we do, we lose about 4% a year due to evaporation. We call that the angel share. It's giving them a drink on us and thanking them for protecting the warehouses. So if the water that escapes the barrel is known as the angel share, then the whiskey that is trapped inside the wood is the devil's cut. If the angels get their share, then the devil gets his cut, right? And so what you guys are going to experience here is a 90-proof bourbon whiskey with big oaky notes at 6 years old, and hope you like it. And so innovation is very important. And we continue to innovate by looking towards getting inspiration from the past, but always innovating into the future as well. Cheers.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
They're obviously greedier angels in Kentucky because our angel share is only 2%, so they're 4%. I don't know.
We have happier angels in Kentucky.
Okay, so that is the end of round.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Mr.
Yeah,
Campbell.
that's,
You were impartial.
Yeah. He's been a bit too impartial there.
Okay, I forgot my good friend from Scotland here, John.
Okay. So innovation plays a huge part in what we do, because with Scotch whisky being the most popular whisky in the world, we're really struggling with stocks nowadays. These guys aren't. They've got lots. So we've had to innovate as a necessity to keep the production going. So and Lafroig is a classic example of this. When we lay down, one thing we've guaranteed to have got wrong over the period that I've been at Lafroig is the amount you lay down, because the taste for this type of whisky, like we say the most richly flavoured of all Scotch whiskies, is growing and growing all the time. People are looking for flavour experiences all around the world, and these guys we use a lot of tradition to innovate as well, just like the guys have said, but it's all about flavour experiences. It's all about life experiences nowadays. So with Lafroig, you get one of the most satisfying. So what Lafroig is, I've said it's a really peaty, powerful whisky. Some of you might find it quite medicinal. Some of the kind of earthy notes coming through. You smell it? A lot of iodine maybe. Lafroig managed to sell into America during the Prohibition, and you could go to your doctor and get some of the tonic to keep you well. So back in the day, even you could sell into the USA. The one thing that really stands out for me with Lafroig versus any other spirit on the planet is depth of flavour. So as much as Lafroig is known for its peaty, powerful, iodine type things, once you get below these layers and peel them away, and you try and put them to the back of your notes, you will get floral, you will get sweet, you'll get some of the bourbon barrels from Kentucky that we do use for the recipe in this one. So there's lots of layers to Lafroig, depth of flavour, so that's the one thing that really makes it good. And in innovating, we've used smaller casks as well to get a quicker maturation. One of our most popular brands is Quarter Cask, launched in 2004, and already, if it was on its own, it would be in the top 20 single malts on the planet as well. So all of these things help to grow, and we should taste the Lafroig. So what you're going to find, it's going to fill your mouth full of flavour. You should expect this. You're going to get sweet first, and then it's going to move up into the middle of the tongue. You're going to get a band of that. Because it's first fill bourbons we use, it's like white pepper or spicy right across the middle of your tongue. It moves out to the edges and becomes lovely and salty with a peat, all surrounded by that peat smoke as well. Okay, so Slange. We should we should be doing toasts. We should be doing toasts. Okay. Nearly. Needing a translator, I think. So here's to us. There's none like us because they're all dead. Slange.
Okay, that's the end of round 2. If you'd like to bring in the next whiskies for round 3, the final round here. Favourites from this one. We started with the
Green Ore.
With the Green Ore. Yes. Applause. Yes.
Come on. Green Ore. Yeah.
Devil's Cut. Devil's Cut.
That was some good whiskey, wasn't it?
Yeah. And of course Lafroig. Oh. All right. Moving into the last
Bit of work
round.
to do for the last round.
John has a little humor for us.
Potentially.
There we go.
Hopefully, if you can understand. So, the Irish are known for being great philosophers, great poets, great literary geniuses. Would we say that? Yep. No?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So there's a guy called Sean O'Leary, stayed in Islay, and this is true. Sean O'Leary, Irish guy, an artist. So he used to draw, you've seen his pictures on the walls in the Islay Hotel.
Place I had to break into.
Yep. So he said the perfect breakfast involves a bottle of Scotch whisky, a haggis, and a border collie sheepdog. Okay? And then when somebody says to him, well, why do you need the dog? And he went, to eat the haggis. So Sean O'Leary was a man of great taste.
And that just reminds me of you know, all this. The Scots really were pilferers, you know, taking different ideas. But they were also very, very gullible, you know. And as we all know, we invented whiskey. But we also invented the wearing of the kilt. And we also invented playing of the bagpipes. But of course, the Scots being so gullible, they didn't realise that two of them were jokes.
Okay. Round 3. Our final round here. What makes your whiskey unique? All right. What makes your whiskey unique? What makes it stand alone? And we're going to start with bourbon, Mr. Adam Harris, and Maker's Mark.
What makes bourbon unique? America's a melting pot. People from all over the world come to America, the United States, trying out a new life. Bourbon, we welcome everybody to bourbon. If you want to drink it with a little bit of ice, that's fine. If you want to drink it with a little bit of water, that's fine. If you want it in a cocktail or a highball, that's fine too. We want you to like it the way that you enjoy it. That's how you should be drinking bourbon. It's unique in that aspect. We're not too high on it. We like for people to enjoy it in their own style. With that said, I always just thought it was people that liked bourbon. But a little something happened to me one time when I was fishing that kind of led me to believe that with bourbon, we actually might be able to span the world and bring more of the creatures of the world into the bourbon category. So do I have any fishermen here? People that like to fish in the crowd? Yeah. Anyone like to fish? Yeah. No? So I fish. A little fly fishing sometimes, a little cast fishing too. One time I'm fishing on a lake, and I like to take a whiskey with me from time to time, and I take a Maker's Mark with me. And sitting there fishing, and long day, a nice good day, but getting a little low on whiskey, but I'm also getting lower on bait. And so what happens is I happen to see this copperhead swim by with a frog in its mouth. And as I'm thinking I don't have any bait left, I could probably use that frog for some bait, but how am I going to get that away from the snake? And so as that snake starts coming closer to me, I get a stick, a nice little bead. So I pick the snake up out of the water with the frog, and I got to get the frog out of the snake's mouth, right? And so what I think about is, how am I going to do this without hurting myself? And then I remember, I've got my whiskey with me. So I take my bottle, I grab that snake real quick by the jaw. He lets go of the frog, and before he has a chance to bite me, I pour a little Maker's Mark down his throat. His eyes go back in his head a little bit, goes a little limp. I let him swim away. So I start fishing with this frog. About 30 minutes later, as I'm starting to wrap things up, my last cast of the day, I feel this thing slither by my heel. I look down there, and there's that damn snake. This time, he's got two frogs. So bourbon is bringing all of God's creatures together. But what we have here is we have Maker's Mark. And really what makes Maker's Mark unique is the fact that for over 50 years, this has been a very unique bourbon in the fact that we use wheat in the mash bill instead of rye. Bourbon has to be, like we said, at least 51% corn. Majority of bourbon out there on the market uses rye as a secondary flavoring grain. Maker's Mark has always been different and unique in the fact that we use wheat as our secondary flavoring grain. 70% corn, 16% soft red winter wheat, and 14% malted barley. What that's going to do is it's going to be a little bit sweeter on the tongue, not as spicy as the other bourbons we were trying. Rye makes a bourbon spicy and towards the back of the tongue. The wheat in the bourbon is going to make it sweet and towards the front of the tongue. And that's quite by design. We wanted to create a softer, sweeter bourbon. Over 50 years ago, when Bill Samuels Sr. started making Maker's Mark, this was really a bit of a coup. But for over 50 years, that was all we made until recently when we innovated there and made Maker's 46. To go back to the original question, that was really when I kind of knew innovation was for real, because Maker's Mark was always very staunch about having one bourbon. And when 46 came out, I like to call that our second good idea. But yeah, I knew that the world of innovation was really coming to fruition when that happened. So what we're going to look for with Maker's Mark is when we, again, the deep caramel color, the dark, rich the color here, the goldenness, and then when you want to nose it, you're going to see the softness of the wheat. Really balances well with the wood sugar, lets the wood sugar play around a lot. And then when you taste it, what I want you to do is breathe across your tongue, because by breathing across your tongue, you're going to aerate your taste buds, and you're going to see where the tingle is on the tongue. And when you breathe in and out across there, you're going to see that there is no finish on the back of the tongue where the spiciness of rye resonates. It's all almost to the front of the tongue, like there's a sewing thimble on the tip of the tongue. And within that diameter is where Maker's Mark gets you. That's the flavor of Maker's Mark. Nice, soft, sweet bourbon. Number one selling bourbon in the world, premium bourbon in the world. So you guys are getting a nice little hit list of the number one bourbon in the world and the number one premium bourbon in the world with Maker's Mark. So I would say that makes our spirit unique. And the fact that snakes like us too. Cheers, Mo Bourbon.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harris. We'll take the next one to Mr. Cashman and Connemara.
Okay. I suppose if we were to talk about what makes Connemara unique, the fact that it is a peated Irish single malt. It is the only 100% peated Irish single malt. In the past, there have been some that have a small percentage of peating going on, but not 100% of the malt being used is peated. So that's what makes this whiskey so unique. What makes Irish whiskey in general so unique is the soft, approachable nature to Irish whiskey. It is probably one of the easiest whiskies to drink of all whiskies out there, one of the most enjoyable whiskies to drink of all whiskies available. And that is what I believe makes Irish whiskey so unique. But what we have here today, back to the innovation, was at the time something that really upset a lot of people and a lot of die-hard Irish whiskey consumers who just thought that Irish whiskey began with a gem and ended with a sun, and didn't realize that Irish whiskey could be so innovative. And when we started bringing out a peated malt, so many people were saying, you can't do that. That's not Irish. But it is. As I said, no law saying that it shouldn't be. We're just bringing back what was there before. I'm sure my great-grandfather, when he was drinking Irish whiskey, there was peat involved. There was smoke involved in that whiskey. So with Connemara, we brought that back to life. And what makes this whiskey unique is, first and foremost, it is an Irish whiskey. So it is everything that you expect an Irish whiskey to be. Soft, light, fruity, easy drinking. However, take all of that, but add some smoke, add some peat. And most people in Ireland, most people as in their teenage years have probably had a bad experience growing up drinking their father's scotch or whatever it is. And when people think of smoky whiskies, they associate smoky whiskies maybe with Scotland. So when people smell Connemara for the first time, it's all they get is the smoke. All they get is the peat. And their mind is telling them what they think it's going to taste like. But their only point of reference heretofore has been Scottish whiskey. So you have to clear that idea out of your head. Get that out of your head completely and come at this as a complete neutral. Come at this as if you've never smelt or tasted a peated whiskey before. Because if it is your first time tasting Connemara, it's your first time tasting a peated Irish whiskey. So you smell it and it's all about the peat. It's all about the smoke. That's almost there. But underneath the smoke, it's kind of butter. There's vanilla. There's that Kilbeggan Distilling Company DNA, that soft vanilla flavours that come through from the bourbon barrels. And the secret to this whiskey are the different ages that make it up. It is a mixture of 3 different ages of whiskey. 4-year-old peated malt, 6-year-old peated malt, and 8-year-old peated malt. If we were to put an age statement on it, we'd have to put 4 years, because an age statement has to be the youngest. And if this whiskey had a big 4 on the label, nobody would buy it, because the perception today is older is better. Not necessarily the case. And if this had a 4-year-old, people would think it's too young, I can't drink it, it's way too young, it's not going to be good. But if this didn't have 4-year-old whiskey in it, it would not be the whiskey it is today. This is the most awarded Irish whiskey of all time. Best Irish single malt in the world for the past number of years at the International Wine and Spirits Competition at the World Whiskey Awards. In fact, if you take over the past 10 years, all the awards that our competitors have won, add them together, Connemara alone has won more awards than all of those combined. So we've smelt it. Take a little sip.
I think that was Mother Nature telling you to let these good people have a drink.
First sip, it's all about the peat, it's all about the smoke, it's encompassing every crevice. It's nearly the second sip. And remember, anytime you're drinking a whiskey, the first sip is just like a mouthwash. It's just clearing your palate of what was there before. It's the second sip where you really get the flavours. So on the second sip, you'll notice how sweet it is. As soon as that touches your lips, it's so sweet. That's the 8-year-old liquid. The liquid that's 8 years in bourbon barrels, getting the vanilla, getting the softness. The peat is lessened, more vanilla. But as soon as it enters your mouth, once it passes your lips, boom, it's like a peat explosion. That's the 4-year-old liquid. That's the younger liquid that is full of smoke. It's full of youthful exuberance and it explodes in your mouth. And then it's balanced by the 6-year-old. You don't want too much 8 or it's too soft, too much vanilla. You don't want too much 4, it's just a big explosion in your mouth. And it is that subtle combination that makes this whiskey so good. I'm often asked all over the world if I could drink one whiskey for the rest of my life, or if you had stranded on a desert island, what whiskey would you take?
Lefroy?
I'd take Connemara. I would take Connemara. Because Connemara works well with fish. If you're stranded on a desert island, that's all you're going to be eating. Dribble a little bit on smoked salmon, perfect. There's still some blue cheese in front of you. Take a little sip of blue, or a little mouthful of blue cheese and a little bit of Connemara. Absolute perfection there going on in your mouth. Unbelievable combination. So ladies and gentlemen, that's Connemara. That's something unique. Remember, Irish whiskey, vote Irish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cashman. And our last presenter, Mr. Campbell, and Lefroy, 25-year.
I don't like that wry grin he's giving me. There's something coming. Look, I was really nice to him by getting Lefroy 25. He wasn't expecting that, so he's already on a little bit of an advantage here. So just back down, whatever you're about to say.
No, that's the whole point.
That's not dog years, though, right?
So the difference is, like, salesman, production guy. I'm just going to speak from the lip, because you know I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay? Oh. I'm not trying to sell you it and hear it. I'm a production guy. I just tell you it like it is. So, thanks, John. I won't have to say anything about this one. It's, again, you've just had wee Pete. This is Big Pete. Okay? This is the real deal again. That's what we're saying all day. This is the real deal. So, but with that, this one, because it's 25-year-old, you're going to get a lot more complexity as well. So, one of the things that kind of makes Lefroy unique is that peat flavour, but it's the variations of flavours as well, as I've said. So, with this one, it's 25-year-old, fully matured in sherry casks, makes up 40% of this liquid. Okay? The other 60% is refill bourbon barrels, 27 to 28-year-old. Okay? So just like John was saying there, it's the age of the youngest whisky in this one, where there's actually 60% of the liquid is 27, 28-year-old in this. So, what we're trying to do here, we're trying to give you age, which as the cask matures away in Scotland, we lose about 2.5% on Islay, being in the Gulf Stream as well, just similar to what you would here in Ireland. So 25-year-old, you've lost 40%. Ish. My maths isn't that great either, Adam. So you've got 60% liquid, 40% air. So that air, in that climate, you do get chemical reactions and producing different flavours. So these different flavours is why what happens with older whiskies as well, you get all these extra oils out of the wood, you get that difference in maturation profile with the older whiskies that the air gap basically, giving you different flavours. So all of these things all meshed together will make this a very, very complex whisky. So what you should do, now this one's a great example. This is the 2011 edition as well, I think. So when you nose this one, it's not like a Lafroig at all. It's quite cheesy, this one, to me, which is sometimes not a great thing in whisky, but the nose in this one is going to be very different to the palate, okay? So there's...
Is that one of those terms production guys use?
Yep.
Cheesy. Cheesy.
Just straight,
Cheesy whiskey.
yeah, straight to the point, remember? No mucking about. No flannel from me, just the truth. So it's kind of cheesy, then it goes like fruity, really fruity, quite pineapple, and then it goes dry. So that dry, like, it feels like a cold feeling, top of your mouth, back of your nose. That's the three things that come out the nose. Where's the complexity, you're saying? You need to taste this one to get the complexity. So you need to do another toast. So you're going to use that. So we're all friends now. This is the 9th whisky together. Or if we're not, we will be after this.
He doesn't get any better with 10.
Yeah. No, I say I don't eat it. It's all about the whiskey with me. So we're all friends. So a toast to friends. So there are good ships and there are wood ships, and these are ships that sail the sea. But the best ships are friendships, and may they always be. Slange. You want to talk about it?
All right. We're not going to jump right in to the voting yet because you still are enjoying these fine whiskies. But certainly the last round here, Mr. Harris is Maker's Mark, yes? What do we think on that one there, yes?
Yeah.
Mr. Cashman's Connemara?
Bit of Connemara, yeah, thank you.
Lafroig 25-year, Mr. Campbell?
Just because I gave you a 25-year-old, you don't have to vote for it. Remember, it isn't all about the age.
Okay, so we'll just have our closing arguments. Gentlemen, if you can give me 60 seconds on why these good folks here should vote your spirit. You've got 60 seconds. We'll start with Mr. Harris.
All right. Bourbon. Water, wood, and grain. That's authentic whiskey right there. You can't add anything to it. Don't take anything out of it. That's the flavor there. I hope you enjoyed what you drank today from the United States today. I'm going to close it with a toast. So I'll raise a glass with you guys really quick with one of my favorite toasts here. And that is, in heaven, I hear they don't distill their beer. And that's why we should try to drink it all here. So cheers, everybody. Cheers. Vote for bourbon.
Mr. Campbell.
Okay. Again, just hopefully you've learned a bit about Scotch whisky today, the kind of rules, what makes us different, what makes us unique, and the flavour profiles. So if you see and tasted Lafroig today, you'll just see, just like me, we're the real deal. So remember and vote for Scotch whisky. Cheers.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Cashman.
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad whiskey. Let's face facts. Nobody sets out to make a bad whiskey. It's just some whiskies are better than others. And Irish whiskey is better than other whiskies. Despite what my Scottish friends and my American friends say, they didn't need to do anything else. We had perfected it. They just ruined what we were doing. But whiskey is of its environment. It's something that I like to get across to people, just like wine is of its terroir. And in America, yes, they use corn. Kentucky's very warm. They grow a lot of corn. Scotland is that little bit colder. Islay, okay, not too dissimilar to here, but it's all about the seaweed. It's a very, there in a winter storm. And that comes true in the whiskey. It is of its environment. Ireland, look, God invented whiskey to stop us taking over the world. We know that, We are in God's own country here. But, beautiful country, beautiful climate, perfect for whiskey making. And that is our secret. We have a long way to go to where we were in the 19th century, when we were the most popular whiskey if not the most popular spirit in the world. We have a long way to go. The challenge has been set, and I'm setting a challenge here today as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please vote Irish. I'm going to quote Mr. Fred Noe and all these debates I have done in the United States of America when he comes out and says, ladies and gentlemen, it is your patriotic duty to vote Irish. Gareva mila mahagwivagin ushla galer, slán live agus bannacht. Thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen. Safe home, God bless you all, and vote Irish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cashman. And so if you'd like to join me up here front and center, gentlemen, we'll do the final vote. And with your hearts and your hands and the flags of your country, we will do the final vote here. All those in favor of Mr. Harris and the United States? There we go. All right. All those in favor of Mr. Campbell and Scotland? All right. And finally, Mr. Cashman and the Irish whiskey. Well, and I'll go back to the U.S. As we know in the U.S., the popular vote doesn't count. So in the spirit of the SEC, the Spirits Exchange Committee, I will then call this whiskey debate a draw. All right? So... And actually, we will continue the debate tonight at 9:30 at the Palace Bar. If you'd like to join us, please, we will answer any further questions you might have. We also have fantastic websites for all of these spirits. If you have any additional questions, you can go online. You can keep in touch with us through social media as well, Facebook and Twitter. So we'll send you off with this. Our ship lies at anchor, we soon now must dock. We wish you safe journey without any shock. And if ever we should meet again by land or by sea, we'll always remember your kindness to me. So here's a health to the company and one to my lass. Let's drink and be merry all out of one glass. Let's drink and be merry, all grief to refrain, for we may or might never all meet here again. Slán ladies and gentlemen, cheers. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Safe home.